Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, brought to you, of course, by CrowCast, with the support of Smith Partners Real Estate up there at Golden Grove for all your buying, selling and renting needs, down to earth electrical for all your air conditioning, electrical and data needs, and of course all our wonderful supporters on Patreon, who we are eternally grateful for. And joining me this evening is a full deck. Peter, how you going, Pete?
Oh, I'm really well, thanks, mate. Yourself?
Very good for Tuesday night. And Nikki, how are you?
I'm here.
Yes, that's we're all thankful for that, Nikki. We're all better for it. And
So you should be.
Mr. Magoo, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm going quite well, big fan. I'm going quite well.
Pleased to hear it. Pleased to hear it. And we got tons of stuff, I think, to talk about tonight. Both crows and non-crows. So why don't we just crack straight into it, shall we? Peter J, what have we got?
Oh, mate, where would you even start? I think we have to start with a very, very courageous act by one of our own much-loved panellists, Macca, who just a couple of days ago has tipped his toe in the water and has joined the cesspit that is Twitter. So he can now...
Did he really?
He can now get... He did. Macca is on Twitter. So he's at Bill Hartwig, and so you can rustle up Macca on Twitter. So good on him.
Wow.
Interesting stuff. There you go. No, look, I won't waste too much time on that because obviously it's a massive news night. Look, where do you even start? I'm going to start where we always love to start, and that is at the AFL Tribunal, because there was an absolute peach this week. Absolute peach. And I don't know if you've read about it, but the one I'm referring to, of course, is the Marcus Bontempelli non-suspension, GWS player Nick Haynes, who was hit by Bontempelli, but they didn't get the medical report in time.
Oh,
it was
really?
a bit of an unusual... Yep, it was an unusual injury, and it turned out that Haynes has received a fractured larynx. Out of that. But because it was a bit of an unusual injury, the scans didn't come back. It took a little bit of time, but of course the AFL wouldn't, the tribunal wouldn't wait for that, so they graded it as just a low impact because there was no medical evidence before the tribunal. So,
Wow.
so Marcus Bontempelli gets off with a fine, and Haynes is out for 2 to 4 weeks.
Seriously?
With a fractured larynx, and this is what is going on in a professional competition.
Yeah. That's if it wasn't so funny,
You could only
serious.
laugh.
Oh my goodness me!
Yeah,
Stop the Benny Hill music, seriously.
I mean, you can only be stunned by that, can't you?
Well, yes, that's all there is.
And GWS has said be seething,
Of course they are.
and have let it be known through journalist channels that they believe this is just yet another example of the Victorian bias that goes on in the AFL. They were not backward in coming forward about
Hang
that.
on. I think that's the biggest news, Pete. You're actually saying that there's Victorian bias in the AFL.
I know it's incredible, isn't it? You wouldn't think it.
Bloody
And
hell.
I'll be shocked.
And that Bont is a bit of a love child of the AFL, and of course, potentially playing finals, potentially, Brownlow medal.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't. So the easiest thing to do is say, look, sorry, just haven't got the medical evidence here in time, so we're going to have to proceed. We can't hold it over for a day. We've got to proceed. So anyway.
apparently when they put it in, they used 1.5 lines in spacing between the lines as well, and that's outside of the performer rules for the medical report. So,
did they use Comic Sans?
We'll clear that one out of the way, because that's one of those ones where there's barely any point even discussing it because it's just so bizarre. So we'll put that one aside. The other, obviously, the massive news that came out today was Ross Lyon being sacked from Fremantle.
Yes.
And the CEO.
And the CEO, of course, yep. And so it was a big day for the Fremantle Football Club. Old Ding Dong Bell he rang that cowbell as loud as he could.
He certainly did.
That signalled the end of the Fremantle careers of those particular gentlemen. So Ross Lyon seemed pretty relaxed about it, as he always does, and would have very, very little doubt that there wouldn't be something around the corner for him. But interestingly enough, it did. I read today that he is more likely to prefer a general manager of football role than he would a coaching role.
Would you take him in that role?
Where do you sign? Where would you sign?
Really?
I couldn't get my pen out quick enough.
I've heard that about you, Pete. But
The very interesting thing about it, though, was
coach.
the other news that came out today, Pete, about Kelly.
Hang on. Go back. Don't go too far forward. Nick, let's talk about Ross Lyon as a general manager of football.
Well, because I was going to relate that to this and why I wouldn't take him.
Why wouldn't you take him?
Because we know that Kelly was only interested last year to go to West Coast because the whole problem was that he'd been playing in the Waffle. He'd actually approached Ross Lyon after one of the games or something like that, and actually asked him, what do I need to do to improve to try and get on an AFL list? And Lyon's response was, "You'll never make it. Don't bother." Which is why Kelly was not interested in going to Fremantle at all. Now that Ross Lyon has gone, he has met with Fremantle in going back to WA. Now, would you put a guy who couldn't see that Kelly, this type of guy who was willing to do the work and to try and get there, and you look at how well he's actually played in the AFL, I don't think Ross Lyon actually has a good footy IQ.
Oh, no, you can't say that. I don't think you can say that he hasn't got a good footy IQ. I don't necessarily agree with the way he coaches his footy teams, but you can't say that he.
No, neither do I. I certainly wouldn't want him as a coach.
But I guess, Pete, my concern about him as a footy manager or a GM footy ops or whatever you want to call it is whether that philosophy, I guess, would permeate through the coaching ranks and the club from that level. I'd be very concerned about that.
Well, I mean, that's possible, I guess, but I mean, is Don Pike putting in a game plan that's thought out by Brett Burton? I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so. I would have thought that was the province of the coach, but I haven't worked in that environment, so to be honest, maybe he would have some input in that regard. I guess, look, this is what I see, Fiend. I see somebody who would have the gravitas and the strength to be in at the Adelaide Football Club. They would be terrified of getting someone like that. Absolutely terrified of him, because he, because of his stature in the game and because of his strength of character, they would, because they would end up be saying, yes, Mr. Lyon, no, Mr. Lyon, sorry, Mr. Lyon, and they just wouldn't want to operate like that. They want someone they can control, and Bear Brain is exactly that person. So you're not going to get Ross Lyon, but I would love to have him, if for no other reason, just the gravitas that he brings. And his experience, his knowledge, all of those things. Yeah, I think you raise a good point, Fane, about the coaching. I don't know. I don't know the extent to which I would hope that he wouldn't.
I guess
be a pseudo coach.
Well, the other thing about Ross Lyon and the way he coached, all his teams were super organised and super structured. And if you had, if you want someone in the back doing that GM role that gets all the ducks lined up properly, and means that you've got every best shot to do what you need to do on the field. So I'm the only thing I'd be worried about is I think he didn't have a very good record of blooding kids at St Kilda and wasn't too great at the start of Fremantle. So we're already not that good at that. But if we had a bit more structure and someone that actually kind of might half know what they're doing, like no matter who goes in there when Burton goes, it's going to be an improvement. But I think Ross Lyon does have a bit of gravitas. I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Would hate him as a coach, though.
Oh, yeah.
No, I would. Like I said, as in, I wouldn't be totally anti the move. I think he brings a lot.
Just moving. Anything more on Ross, the boss?
No.
So much to get through tonight.
There's one other problem he has, which is the sexual harassment payment he's had to make, which the CEO was hiding as well. So, you know, are you actually going to put that sort of person into your organisation knowing they have that form?
Alleged, Nikki.
No, it wasn't alleged.
Well, I don't think we know enough about that to talk about.
There was a video of it,
yeah.
And they made a hush payment.
Yeah, but I just don't think we know enough about it to be making definitive statements from a legal perspective.
I think that's very, very fair comment, and that's not to downplay what you're saying.
Oh God, no, absolutely not.
It was obviously an issue that was raised, but I think you do have to be careful about labelling him as a certain offender if he hasn't been convicted of that offence. That's all. So moving on from Ross the Boss, there's a lot of fluff and weird stuff coming out of Adelaide media after that diabolical performance. I think there was the little fluff piece that was released just very, very recently, just an hour or so ago, I think it would have been, about the fact that a piece on Chappie and the fact that he is looking to move on in 12 months' time. So that's just to let everybody know there's change afoot, but in 12 months' time, once he kind of gets around to it. So just seemed to me to be a bit of a fluff piece just to try and placate the masses that there is some change going on there. Whether that, when that happens, obviously it's a time of his choosing.
What was good about that, though, he did say in that little interview that there will be an externally led and independent end-of-season review has been commissioned. So,
who?
I don't look. None of the details were there. We're not really a detailed club.
Chappie's not a details man. He really isn't.
No, he's not.
We've got review awareness going on at the moment. It might come up.
I love it. Review awareness.
Look, until I see. Sorry, Pete, just to top that one.
No,
off,
sorry, mate.
Until I see who's appointed and what the scope is, and the breadth of it all, I'm not buying it. Not buying it, well, and I don't know why Chappie gets to choose. To be honest with you, I know he's board appointed, so why can't he be board unappointed?
Yeah. Look, I think for the people that are listening at home that have been involved in our campaign and signing our petitions and retweeting and doing all the things that they've been doing for us, first of all, thank you very much, because the more of us that sort of flick it around, the more that they have to pay attention and do something about it. And the echo chambers have been echoing off, and we've seen a couple more kids play, and we've seen a lot more rumblings about reviews, and from Pike the other week, and now Chapman here. So there's been a lot of time. I think we're being heard. Whether we're being responded to, I think we're being heard. So just keep going. And I think the next stage of it is, if they're talking about they're going to do a review, the real pressure now is we've got to put on, what does that look like, as Fiend said? Who's doing it? What is it covering? What's the scope? What are the outcomes going to be? Are they going to be released? Are they going to when is it due to be finished? Like, those are the sort of questions that we need to be hammering and asking now. So the job, if it does come out and they spill it the next couple of days, we need to make sure that those are the questions that we have answered.
Absolutely. And the petition still is going. The petition still is going on AFL CrowCast.com. Have a crack at it. Get your signature on there if you haven't already. We'll probably be forwarding that to the club when we bow out after this weekend.
Very good. Number of retirements announced around the AFL, but number important for our podcast than club, what would you call him, club great? Not really, I suppose, but very, very highly thought of club man, Andy Otten, calling time on his career. He's been a very, very good servant of the Adelaide Football Club, obviously cut down by injury, but to his great credit and courage shown to get himself back playing a decent level of AFL football, and he's been a very, very positive influence in the SNFL, and you couldn't you couldn't wish badly upon Andy Otten. He's been a real role model in the football club.
Agree 100%. So unlucky with his knees. He was he was a
second in the second in the Rising Star. I mean, you think without those knee injuries, what a player he actually would have been.
Oh, I've got to go back and watch some of the early videos. I don't know if Jeff Abernetch watches this, but if you can find a good Andy Otten highlights video from around 2009
Alberson.
sort of time, Alberson, sorry, some of those things are just magical. You just sit there going, I remember how much hope I used to have.
Well,
I remember how much belief.
It was a bit Duday-like, to be honest with you. Or maybe Tom was a bit early Otten-like.
And the thing is that even though he's had those knee injuries and he's got the turning circle of the Queen Mary, some of those smart football plays he can still do, like the professional free kicks he'll give away to ensure that we get a chance to, to set up behind the ball, or being able to knock the ball out of bounds and not get a deliberate played against more insufficient care, whatever it's called now. He's still a really smart footballer, and I hope he gets a premiership in the SANFL.
And wouldn't that be a great way to finish his career?
Well, it'd be better than nothing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And in 2017, when he sort of came back from, when he came back and hit the deck again, I was really worried about how slow he was in his turning circle. But one thing, and he had a really good stretch of games really early on, and then still played a couple of good blinders later. But the one thing that he didn't have to do was when the ball was kicked to him, he caught it, and when he kicked the ball, it went to the other player. So, he didn't have to run around as much as other people and didn't have to do that big turning circle because his skills were actually just that sublime and good. And when he was doing it, and when he was getting his set shots in front of goals, he was putting them through. It's the basics that are really letting us down now. That's the killer when you watch the Crows over the last 2 years. It's the stab pass that dribbles along the ground, or the one that goes 2 feet over Tex's head, or the drop mark that was an absolute sitter. Those are all the things that are the killers at the moment. And Andy Otten, his body might have let him down, but his hands and his brain never left him.
No, he's been brilliant. There's a few other retirements going around the AFL. I think Jordan Lewis announced today. I think Jared Ruffhead will be at the end of this week as well.
Yep.
A few others off the top of my head I can't think of. Nikki
Bristatelli at the Suns.
Bristatelli at Gold Coast.
Yeah. I think they said like a year later that it was officially announced or something.
Oh, and Kieran Jack from Sydney Swans, he's announced his retirement. So there's a few of them going around at the moment. It's that time of the year. Just in terms of the Crows, another one of those really funny mixed message kind of weeks when you have those bad games like that, where we had Don Pike saying in his presser that what a mess it was, and we needed to all components of the football club needed review. And then the very next day they roll out the captain saying that we can we're actually really, really good and we can beat any club anywhere, anytime. I mean, why would they have the captain coming out making statements like that? I do not know after the second half of the year that we've had, but just that mixed messaging is it just doesn't seem as though they're all on the same page down there.
Yeah.
Anyone?
Thanks,
shaking
Tom,
my head.
Yeah.
It's just so painful. But you know what it is? It's the Apricot Slice Brigade. Like they want to have a button hit on them that says we're doing great, we could beat anyone. Rah rah rah. Let's pump our tires up. So they will respond to that message. So that message wasn't for us that are sitting there watching every move they're doing because we don't want our club to be horrible for the next 10 years and we actually want to win a flag at some point. The people that just want the Margarets of the world that just want to watch us play good hard 4 quarters and see the boys have a good time. They want to hear that. And that's the problem.
Well, without
thanks, Margaret.
Without sour grapes, it's evident to me that the club has aligned themselves with that section of the membership.
Mm.
Their actions over the last couple of weeks have made that abundantly clear to me. I'm still waiting for Ian's response with his answers to our questions that he promised to get to me over the weekend. So we still can't play Fags' interview. We still can't talk about those questions. And yet apparently the General Manager of Media has enough time to go set up the Crow Show down at Crowject. It's not a slight against the project, not at all.
Good on him.
Good on him. But apparently they've got time to do that, but they haven't got time to answer questions that they asked us to provide during the bye round. So
why don't we just say we're playing it next week, and if you don't get back to us, they're playing it uncut.
Well, I mean, the interview is not the thing. The interview is quite tame, and I could probably play it and not get into any trouble because it doesn't say anything. It's the questions that we asked that were questions asked by not only people from Big Footy, but people from Twitter, people from Facebook. We had some really, really good questions, some very in-depth and well-thought-out questions. But apparently we'd rather do fluff pieces about happy clappers, which, to this day, I'll never apologise for not being one of.
8:30 next week, Shutters. You got a week. Good luck.
No, and I'm not hanging shit on Shuts because I know he's flat out, but it just to me it's not good form. Not good form.
It's a long time.
Yeah,
it's a long time. We've given enough grace.
I think so. There's not too much more than you. I think Finn, I hit my high point with the Bontempelli.
Yeah, you went hard early on that one.
I should have kept that up on my sleeve, I reckon.
Well, you've got one more on Victorian silliness.
Yeah, there's two other things.
You go. I'm done.
All the hoo-ha about, oh, poor Jack, he was so hard done by with the studs up rule. I mean, he was going up with his feet out, which the rule clearly states you're not allowed to do.
No, shut up, Nikki.
But now they're going to take it away.
No, that is the most ridiculous rule in the history of rules.
No, I have no problem. I have no problems with it being a ridiculous rule. But the fact that they've had it all year, other players have done it, but it's only when it happens to poor Jack do they go, oh, okay, yeah, we'll change it now. 2 weeks out from the finals, that is the height of stupidity. No matter how stupid the rule is in the first place, the fact that there's a double standard for particular players as they are over others.
Yeah. And you'll love this, Fane. They haven't actually changed the rule. They're just going to change the interpretation.
It's all about the interpretation.
And it's been going on. It's been going on for how long? But then it happens to Jack.
Yeah.
And the whole competition just So did we upset Jack? Oh God, we thought that those 7 home games in a row at MCG leading into the finals, and also making sure that you'd get an MCG final even if you finished 4th and you played Geelong, who were top. We thought that would placate you, but
no,
you're upset about Jack as well. So we'll just change that rule for you.
In fairness to Jack, though, he gets pretty upset when he goes to the fridge and the missus has used the last of the margarine, and he's got to have his dry toast. He doesn't even like that. So
anyway, anything else?
Anymore.
Tough crowd tonight.
No, there's one other very interesting piece of news is that
is there,
Patton,
Nikki? Is there really?
Yes, who has apparently been training for a couple of weeks now.
What's he doing?
And is all fine. Well, he's apparently been training, getting ready to play again, but he's now got general soreness, and so he's not going to play this weekend. Yeah. But he's also apparently been meeting with Hawthorn.
Well, that's what he's training for. His role at the Hawks, take over Roughhead.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, apparently we got Caniglio going to Carlton. We got Patton going to Hawthorn. Someone else is going to Carlton as well. Apparently their salary cap is triple everyone else's. It's all happening. It's all happening. But yeah, I think Hawthorn will get that done if they want to get that done. Patton. They seem to be able to get their man.
Yep. They do every year.
Well, you've got to admire them because they take a
absolutely.
completely different approach to list management than every other club. They don't place any value at all on untried talent. They pick it up if they have to, but they couldn't care less. They go for exposed form and exposed talent, and they assess their list accurately and with it, as Kenneth says, a lack of emotion. They look where their needs are, and they go and pick the players out that they need. And you got to hand it to them. Like, they don't speculate very much. There aren't many speculative picks in their team, and probably the only one is that young midfielder. What was his name? Warple.
Yep.
He's been a good get, but they are renowned for building their list around exposed talent, and they're playing off the currency of success. You know, they've cashed in massively on a couple of years down the bottom, a really good super draft, followed by 4 premierships, and then they've turned themselves into a successful club, and they can ride that credibility and that legacy for years to come, because that's the currency. How do you get a bloke to Hawthorn? You just point at the trophy cabinet.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, well,
so good on them.
Worked for me.
Good on them. Anyway, let's talk about our disaster for a minute, shall we? Because I'm sure, Peter, that you've got something to say. And normally, I would play some J-Mac-inspired heavy metal riff going into match talk. But this week I'm going to play this one.
Perfection.
I couldn't think of a more appropriate soundtrack to lead into talking about our match against Collingwood. Pete, could you?
No, it's absolutely you're spot on there, and perfectly sums up. All of the insulting language, I suppose, that you can think of could be thrown at this game, and I'm sure it already has been. I think I'm going to start though with what I saw on Twitter last night. I don't know if anybody else caught it on Twitter. One of the Crows fans who posts regularly on there, Baron Von Crow, got hold of a whole lot of footage and was posting it up on Twitter about and showing the complete lack of accountability of our midfield. And there was one in particular which really stood out to me, the footage from behind the goal, and it showed a portion of play where Brodie Grundy had taken a mark at centre half forward in the northern end for Collingwood, and Callum Brown had run at pace from almost inside the centre square on the wing on the western side, and had cut through the centre. He ran straight past Brad Crouch, and then Matt Crouch kind of tailed him behind him at a jog while he did that. And then once Brodie Grundy had taken the mark, Callum Brown had got himself in position to take the handball receive, and then just hit up Jamie Thomas with a pretty simple pass and for a goal. But when Thomas took that mark, Luke Brown, who had actually been minding the mark on Grundy, he just turned around and gave Matt Crouch a fearful spray.
Massive spray.
It was. I assume you saw it, but
yeah.
And there was a couple of other ones like that, and it just showed to me that there's guys that and then there was, not to continually pick on Matt Crouch, but there was another one when Jamie Elliott had a shot for goal on an angle, and Matt Crouch could have been sort of how you stand the mark at the side to make sure they can't play on. He just turned his back and was walking back to the centre.
Yep.
And so Thomas then had the easy play. Elliott had the easy play onto the right hand side to screw the ball back. Lazy, disinterested football, and I think that those kind of things summed up the night. When you see a performance against the performance we put up against West Coast, which I wasn't overly impressed with, as you know, Fiend. I said last week, didn't impress me that much, but at least I could sit there and say, well, at least I saw some effort today. And then you see that on Saturday, and what you wonder is, how is it that you can go away to Perth and put in a bit of effort like that, still come up short? That's okay. At least as I said, you've put in effort, and you go home before your home supporters, and you put up that in front of your home crowd.
I felt like there was effort in the first half, Pete. You didn't think so?
Oh, no, yeah, no, that's probably fair. No, sorry, that's a fair comment. To be fair, I'm probably talking about second half.
There was effort from probably a majority of the players, but not all of them in the first half.
Yeah. I wasn't. I mean, at half time, I wasn't feeling great. But no, you're right. I'm probably talking more about the second half thing, to be honest.
Yeah, and to me, It looked like a manifestation of the complete disconnect between the coaches and the players, Pete, because it looked like the coaches didn't trust the players to execute any sort of aggressive game plan, and it looked like the players were looking at what the coaches were telling them to do and thinking this is bloody ridiculous. An utter disconnect, in my opinion.
And I'd love to. What is it? I would love to see, and I can probably go and. I've got time on my hands at the moment. I might just go and have a look, but I would be really interested to see what our score for and against is for second halves this year. It would be extraordinary.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, our first quarters are our worst. I was only looking at that yesterday, and I haven't got the numbers, I'm sorry, but I was surprised to see that our first quarters are our worst.
Well, first quarters have been bad all year and not necessarily high scoring, but our we used to sort of bring it home a little bit, but especially since the break, since the bye, our second half has just been abominable.
Yeah, it has.
Absolutely abominable. I reckon they need to change their orange supplier. That's my take. That's better. It's nice.
No, it's
Thanks,
very
man.
good. It's very good, Donkey.
But I mean, all we saw on Saturday was what we've seen. I mean, we've just seen it, on repeat, rinse, repeat from the bye. We've just seen, second halves where we just have no proper functioning midfield that, that's accountable in any way, shape, or form. And I haven't seen the coaches' votes. Have the coaches' votes come out this week?
No, they're in the same
them.
spot as the staff page on the Crows page.
So you can almost get set that Pendlebury will get the coaches' votes. He'll probably get 10 coaches' votes, and that will be how many midfielders, how many of the prime midfielders of the opposition have had 10 coaches' votes.
Oh, every week since the bye, I think.
It happens every week. Shuey's got 20 coaches' votes in 2 games against us. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And then, you've got the lad from Essendon, I can't think of his name now.
Merritt.
Zach Merritt, 10 coaches' votes. Kelly got 9 from Geelong. Robbie Gray got 10. I mean, if you're a Cripps got 10 for Carlton. If you're a midfielder, and if you're your team's, you'd be thinking to yourself every week when you go out to play, I'm going to get battered from pillar to post. I'm going to get tagged, and you have a hard time. But you just know that all just falls away.
Yep.
You can just.
You get to
do
the
what
point.
you like.
Yeah, you get to the point, Pete, where you just think I think to myself, when the commentators watching questioning what the hell's going on, when they ex players like Jonathan Brown are looking, going, these blokes just aren't putting in. You just got to think, irrespective of individual talent, irrespective of whether it's deserved or not, this squad just needs to be broken up, because whatever the dynamic is, whether they've never gotten over the Walsh tragedy, whether they're not in sync with Pike, whether they've been severely impacted by Burton and the camp and all the rest of it, whatever the cause, I don't think it's reparable, do you? I think you just got to break this squad up now, particularly the more senior players. I think you've just got to break it up and start again.
Yeah, I heard Malcolm Blight last night on radio, and how everything's so simple for him, and yet he's always able to get to the heart of things in just a few very, very simple words. That's the art of him, and he just said that in any football club, you live and die by your senior players and your senior staff. And he said, and if you haven't played finals for 2 years, then that's on your senior players, and you've got to get rid of them. That it hasn't worked, and so you have to turn over your senior players. And he lumped the blame quite fairly and squarely on the senior players, and he said, and that's where you've got to turn it over. He said, because teams win premierships with senior players.
Yep.
Well, and that's exactly reflective of what he did when he joined the Crows in '96, isn't it? Or '97.
Well, it is, and
got rid of those senior players.
And I think that's what because what he said is that leading up to 97, we'd missed the finals for the 3 years prior.
Yep.
That was 3 years, and so he said, and Wildy, I think it was David Wildy was on with him, said, yeah, and so you went in and you got rid of those senior players. He said, yeah, I did. He said, because they weren't taking the team to finals.
No.
So it's on them.
Well, and if you go back and let's not live in the past, but if you go back and have a look at the team that won the inaugural, I mean, he had blokes that had played less than 20 games playing in that grand final. He trusted them. He got them together. He got them enthusiastic. He got them playing on the same page, and he trusted them.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I reckon stuck out to me on the weekend. Some of our younger guys, I reckon Chase Jones fell on this. I know the jury's a bit out on him, but I think that our young blokes and quite a lot of our players are all playing to this structure and system, and they're too scared to actually just do what is smart at that particular point in time. They're not pragmatic enough to be able to make the right call. And it just looks like we're slow and stilted, and our young guys just aren't. We're not harnessing that energy that drives premierships. And we've said it probably every week now for a while, but if you look at Western Bulldogs in 16, Richmond in 17, West Coast last year, they backed in some kids to be able to play the game and use their energy and probably lack of fear to get them over the line. And we just seem too scared of that.
And the other thing Malcolm sort of always says is, you give a young player a game because you actually don't know. As a coach, you actually don't know whether they're going to be able to do it or not. So you got to play them, and you find out. Right? And all these things they just seem so simple, don't they?
Yeah, but they're not, and not to backslap, but they're not dissimilar to what we've been saying for a long time, and not just us, but I think a large proportion of the thinking man's Crow supporter. We've wanted to see what these kids can offer, and because we know exactly what we're going to get from Richard Douglas, from David McKay, from the Crouch boys. We've known forever, for the last 5 seasons, what we're going to get from these players. We don't know what we're going to get from Chase Jones, and look what happens when you play a young bloke. Darcy Fogarty comes straight in
the middle.
Tom Diday, Riley O'Brien. I mean, look what happens when you give young kids a go. And it's like you don't need any clearer examples than those 3 players. And we've got blokes that have been burnt. You go on about Geordie Gallucci, Pete, and I 100% agree with you. He's been absolutely flogged to death by our selection committee. So, I mean... But it smacks to me when you've got a cliquey bunch of senior players, which is what it seems to me that we've got. You risk total rebellion if you haven't got the complete support of the club to break that apart. Then you've got no choice but to keep it together, have you, Pete? It's either one or the other. So, and I don't think Don's ever had the support of the club to break up that group of players.
Yeah. No, that's right, and you're right. You have to go one way or the other. And look, he's stuck with them, and we've been through the stat 100 times about how many players are still there from round 1, 2016 to now, and so he's quite clearly stuck fat with that those senior players and the playing group generally. And so I absolutely support what you're saying, and excuse me, very well that I've not been a particular fan of this playing group for quite a while now.
Yep.
And because you see the same thing repeated over and over. It's in their DNA. They just, when it suits them, they just, and this is not I say this in a football context, and I mean this only in a football context, they are a dishonest, untrustworthy playing group. And you do not know what you're going to get from one week to the next. There just doesn't feel to me that there's really much accountability from within the group either. You just roll on and you just turn up to the next game, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And how you can put in sorry, I'm repeating myself, but how can you put in a performance like you did against West Coast, and then in the second half against Collingwood, when there's a season on the line and you're only 18 points down, how you can put that effort in, and same against Port Adelaide in the second half, same against Essendon in the second half. I mean, you can just go, you can keep going, and you can go back to 2016. You can go back to the round 23 game against West Coast. You had a top 4 place on the line, just don't turn up. It's very, very frustrating, and I've got to a point now where I'm just sort of in a spin. I'm thinking now, what is at the heart of the problem? Is it the coaching? Is it the player development? Is it the actual players? I keep bouncing from one to the other and thinking, no, this is where the problem is, and this is where the problem is. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I'm finding it very, very hard to settle on one particular thing.
Yeah, I think it's what you touched on a bit before about the culture of internal accountability. There's a part where, Don Pike's right. He can't be out there doing the things for them on the ground. And, some of those videos we saw put up by online last night, just showing sort of Matt Crouch trundling off behind and a few of those other little things. Just, you can't coach someone actually putting in the effort. Like, that's actually an internal thing, and someone's got to want to do that and want to put in those performances. And I think we've got to ourselves to a situation now where we pat each other on the back and tell each other how tough and resilient we are from coming back from a lot of things, but we don't ever translate that into football toughness and resilience. And if we don't show up in the first quarter or we get blown away a bit, there's never, ever a comeback. I can only think of one game in the last 4 years where I've thought that was a really, really decent comeback. Maybe two. I think West Coast in maybe 2017 and the Collingwood draw, where we were down by a lot, and we said, you know what, we're gonna come back and do this. As soon as we have the wind going the other way and it's not working for us, we all just drop our heads and wait for the game to be over. Well, I mean, why can't we come back? Why can't we be one of those sides that people go, oh, they're never dead, Adelaide. They're never dead. They're going to come back in a minute. The Hawthorns of their smashing era. I remember going to 2017 as well, down to the G from round 4 or something like that. And we got ourselves to about 3 or 4 goals up, and they were like, "Oh, well, we've got this," and they just they passed and moved and did the work they needed to do and got the job done. We just we don't have that ruthlessness about us. We don't have that pride in our performance, and there's a part where that comes from the players on the ground, but we've also got to go. If it's still happening, then who's not making the changes where they need to make so people know it? So, just so depressing.
Nick, what do you reckon?
And I think it is a combination of a number of things. But I do agree that we can't trust this playing group. We know there's some good players within there, but they deserve to have a team around them that also aren't going to give up the fight like they don't, which is particularly a back line. I mean, they're the only shining light really this year, apart from, you'd say, in the first half of the season, Cam Ellis-Yeoman and Rob, and the development that they've come along with. But I can't really pick any other area out too much, or any other players that I could say, well, I don't want you to be traded because I can see that there's an advantage to keeping you. I think there's so many players that should be on the chopping block, and we should be moving along, because they are too complacent. And because of that, it then means the complacency is because they know that they've got security from coaching staff who have been in the position for too long at this club. And we need that change. I think that Don Pike actually has the ability to be a very good coach, but I think there's the opportunity for him to be home now with the Freo job. I can see him leaving for that quite easily, and they would take him in a heartbeat, and he'll get Sumich as his number 2. And you watch Freo move up the ladder, and if nothing, and then I would fear that what they'll probably do is make Campo bloody head coach. God.
No, that won't happen. That won't happen.
Better not.
Not a chance.
It wouldn't surprise me, though.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, bloody hell. The doomsday scenario. Christ. Breathe into the brown paper bag, donkey.
But you actually know that he's got that faith. And with what Chapman was coming out with, that dreck this week, I can see him doing it.
Well,
we can all see that it's a bad move. They can't, because they are blind.
Look, I think if that were to happen, I think that there are plenty of straws that might break the camel's back, but I think that would be a whole 1-ton bag of straws that would crush the camel completely. Look, I think you're on the money, Nick, to a degree, because I think that there's a circulating, or self-perpetuating culture that's slowly eating away at the club. I think there's too much, what do they call it, self-flagellation in the office at the Crows. They're all pretty proud of themselves. They've all got the good jobs. They're all surrounded by their mates and all that sort of stuff. And I think that permeates to the senior group of the playing squad. And they're pretty proud of themselves. They get a game every week, irrespective. And then it just goes round and round in circles. And there's no, I keep saying it, Pete, and I won't say it again too much, but no competitive tension whatsoever within that club. There is no introspection. There's no self-analysis. They might think they're doing these things, but they're not doing it with any sort of level of objectivity. And as a consequence, they're not making clear and rational decisions. And the decision to make Brett Burton the general manager of footy operations was a classic example of that. You know, it looks like arrogance, but I don't know whether it's arrogance. I think it's blindness. I think it's such a bubble down there. Nepotism,
Yeah.
exactly. But it's a shining example of where the club is at, because there's just no way that Brett. And this isn't a personal attack on Brett. I don't know Brett. I don't know what sort of bloke he is. But purely from the point of view of his ability, his CV, because, look, to be honest with you, Pete, and you'd probably feel this. In fact, everyone on this podcast would feel the same. If we'd have known that we could have rocked up with a CV the quality of Brett Burton's and got the GM footy ops job, I think we ought to have put our hands up, wouldn't we? I reckon our CVs would probably stack up pretty well against Bird.
Yep.
Yeah, for that particular role.
Because at least we'd have some administrative background.
Yeah, that's right. I think I've actually managed people before. Shit, Bird, sorry. But I mean, so I think it's self-perpetuating, and I think whether we were mortally wounded by the Walsh tragedy and whether the group of players were mortally wounded by that situation, whether the club itself went into a situation of what do they call it? Where you can't move. What's it called?
Paralysis.
Not paralysis, but that'll do.
Stuck in quicksand.
I don't know, but the simple fact is that, like you said, Pete, you can't trust them. When the players go out in the second half, inertia. That's it. Thank you, Peter. When the players go out in the second half against Collingwood and basically look bereft of ideas and, more importantly, bereft of passion, we've all played sport. There's only one reason you don't have passion, and that's if you don't believe anymore. And I don't think this playing group believe, because they can't believe and turn up and play that sort of crap after half time.
No.
Yeah. Look, I'm prepared to give a bit of leeway in terms of, we got close in 2017. Obviously, the injury sort of happened last year and we started to capitulate. This year was the year to back in everything correcting itself, because it was an injury-related problem we had last year, nothing else, and it was going to get corrected. But I think now's the time to snap it off, so to speak. This list isn't getting better. They've had 2 years to recover from a grand final, haven't done it. They're going backwards fast. They're getting old faster. It's just, I don't mind being pragmatic and trying to tinker and put in people like Bryce Gibbs to win now when it's win now time. But the worry that I have is we're not going to acknowledge that it's no longer win now time. Like this, the group has had its shot and we just missed, and it's unlucky. And there's going to be a few good blokes that are never going to win a premiership. But rather than risking the next two generations, which I think we kind of are, let's move them on. Let's do what we need to do. Let's actually do the retooling and the rebuild.
There's only one shining light left in this season, and I was driving home from the game on Saturday evening, and I thought to myself, there is only one positive left in this season, and that is the fact that our SNFL team will play in a qualifying final. They're every chance to play in a granny, and I love the SNFL team.
Yeah,
and I've loved them all year. And there's some
except
really,
when Douglas and Gibbs are playing.
Exactly, we went on a bloody 5-game losing streak or whatever it was when they played.
No, we did.
It'd be
We
funny
did.
if it wasn't true, Dom.
We we were top. We were top, and then
We
they've
were
gone back.
smashing
They've gone
teams.
back to the AFL, and now we've gone back to. Or we didn't win last week. We won the week before, but we'll play in a qualifying final, and there is some incredibly likeable and exciting talent in that SNFL team, and so I'm all on the SNFL team now. I really couldn't give a rat's ass what happens on Sunday, and I think that it will be a wonderful experience for some of those kids, and it will. Don Pike did make this accurate point, I thought, on radio through the week when he said that it will, for them to get a good final series under their belt at state league level, will fast track their development. So I can't wait. I'm really keen.
So, Pete, given that I think we all agree that the list needs to be turned over, and given that it looks like we've got a good crop of youngsters in the twos that will gel over the next 4 weeks, experiencing finals in the SANFL, is Don Pike the coach to take that group and the group that come through over the next couple of years? Is he the coach to do that?
It's a tough question, isn't it? I've got a funny feeling they'll retain him. I don't think he'll go. Look, I don't see any reason why he couldn't take them over and bring them on. He's obviously a coach that shows a lot of loyalty. I think that if we can extract that significant segments of that playing group he's become attached to away from him, if that makes sense, and start to bring some of these kids in. He has shown on occasion. I mean, he's played. Chase Jones has had a few minutes in the guts, and we've finally got Fogarty playing in the right position. I guess the thing that I don't know, Fane, to be perfectly frank with you, is that I don't know the extent to which he's got control down there, and this probably comes back to what we were talking about before when I mentioned about Ross Lyon.
Yeah,
I don't know the extent of control he's got down there with selection. I don't know the strength of the assistants. I don't know what sort of coach Godden is and how good he is. And I mean, Hart gets all sorts of criticism. Marty Mattner somehow escapes criticism. I don't know. It's very, very difficult without being there inside the four walls. Very, very difficult to know if he is the right coach to take us forward. But what we do know, he's lost segments of the playing group. But what I will say is that this was the reason that Sanderson went, is because he lost segments of, a very similar makeup of the playing group.
Yep.
And so it just feels to me a little bit like we're getting a second gen tantrum.
It is a tantrum. Absolutely, it's a tantrum.
And so if it's the same players having the same tantrum, then I just think that, at some point you have to say, well, it can't always be the coach that goes.
Yeah. And I said, we've had, in the last 10 years, we've had probably our longest decade as a club. And I said this the other day on somewhere, probably Twitter. We've had, I think it's 5 senior coaches. We've missed finals more than we've played. We've missed the last 6 years. We've had one crack at a GF that was a busted flush, and we've capitulated after that. We've had Campo in there as a assistant coach that entire time, and we've had the Tippett sanctions. We've had mass player exoduses. We've had so much going on. It's just Groundhog Day, and those guys at the top of the pool, our top senior players aren't leading us the way they need to.
And Fane, we had, you remember, we had a lot of intel last year on Mitch McGovern.
Yep.
And you'll remember that. And you remember a lot of that, turned out to be, what ended up happening turned out to be absolutely accurate. So we've got absolutely every reason to believe that the source of that information knew exactly what was going on.
Oh, no doubt.
And he or she was very, very specific in the information related to the clique of senior players, and that it was a real clique, and that was a contributing factor to McGovern wanting out.
Yep, no doubt at all.
You remember that?
Yep, I do.
And I'm pretty sure Jared Lyons was the same.
Yeah, look, and you're leading into my answer to my question. I don't think Don is the right coach to take us forward. I don't know whether I trust him with a group of dynamic young kids to actually allow them to play and showcase their abilities and to build a game plan that maximises their strengths. I fear that he's too rigid. And it may well be that he's just had to be that way because of his own doubts and lack of trust regarding our current squad. But I feel like, I'm very, very disappointed that we couldn't get our hands on David Teague. I think we've messed that up badly because I think the direction that we need to head is very similar to what Carlton have done. You see the energy that Teague has been able to generate within that playing group down at Carlton. So I think there needs to be a coach that is able to inspire and motivate the young lads and get them on board. I don't know whether Don's that guy. I think he might be a bit authoritarian, a bit dry, a bit even, if you know what I mean. I think he could
system-based.
A bit system-based, yep. And I don't know whether he's going to be able to inspire a young playing group. So I agree with you. I don't know whether we can afford to cut him short on his contract.
You'd kind of want him to actively walk to the Freo job.
Well, that's the only way it's going to... He's not going to go to Freo.
Yeah.
He won't go to Freo, Nicky. John Longmuir's got that. He won't go... Longmuir or Sumich have got that job. Pike won't go. And Pike's exposed himself as being Ross Lyon 2 in the last 6 weeks. So why would Fremantle want that shit all over again? So I don't think he goes to Fremantle. I think he stays with us. I think he sees another year at least. But I fear that he's not the right fit.
Well, I think whatever they do now, they've got to start from ground zero. So they've either got to say, right, we're backing you in to regenerate the list over the next few years, and it's going to be your list, and blah blah blah. Or, as you say, they've got to decide, look, he's not the guy that's going to be able to regenerate that list, and say he's got to, like they did with Lyon, they've got to cut him now, not wait 12 months till, and waste a year.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very pertinent what they said at Fremantle. They sort of said, look, there's no point now in waiting for 12 months because he's just not the guy to take us forward.
Yeah, you'd be marking time.
You'd be marking time.
Yeah. And look, to be honest with you, the guy that I would love to see the Crows have a massive smash at is Scott Burns from Collingwood.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a forgotten man in assistant coaching circles. He's had a bit of a sniff around before. But the reports on him are very, very good. I think he tanked his interview with us when he interviewed a few years ago because of the feeling that Walshy had the thing in the bag. I'd love to see Scott Burns have a crack. I think he's a hard nut. I don't think he'd put up with any shit. I think he's the right generation, and I think he's a player that would command enough respect of a young group to be able to, lift them up and take them forward with his own unique brand.
I mean, my other thing, and I've kind of talked about it a little bit in the chat, was do we also move Uni up from the SANFL into the AFL ranks?
How can we do that, Nikki? We've got 2 rookie coaches already.
I know, but I think Uni actually has been as part of that. He used to be that more overseeing. When we had that beautiful ball movement, everything else, he was actually the kind of that senior assistant in a way, and was working with Pike on that particular coaching structure that we had with that ball movement from 2017. That's when Uni was sitting in the AFL box well as in the SANFL.
Uni didn't manufacture that.
He didn't, but he was part of implementing that. And we know from what we've seen in the SANFL, particularly this year, of how he can work with that younger group.
Yeah.
And those type of players in there. So that's where I'm thinking that, that maybe he's more that senior assistant type role that provides that link and that help with the enthusiasm and keeping them on track for those youngsters, because you just have to look at what he's done with,
I just don't think you can elevate him from an SANFL development coach to a senior assistant role. I think Heath, everything that you're saying about Heath is probably true, but I think in order for Heath to move up the pecking order in the coaching ranks, he needs to move to another club and get some experience in a line coaching position. I don't think we can afford to have more inexperience in the coaching box.
No, and we're feeling. Look, I have a sense that really we feel like I certainly feel like we've exposed ourselves just purely for the fact that we've got Godden and Matner and Hart and Godden and Matner, they got flags.
Yep,
they got sample flags. And yet I still feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's all I'd say with it. The only thing I would say about Scotty Burns is that I just and I agree with everything you say about him. I think that he's a little bit under the radar. He went through a period where he was applying here, there, and he was always talked about as a next big thing. No doubt got great credentials. I just worry if we're looking at saying we're going to be moving on Don Pike, I just at risk of using that word that I used earlier on before, I just feel like we need someone with some AFL, a name, with some, again, some gravitas, who can go in there and scare the board. And do you know what I'm trying to say?
So you think that all right? So I do see what you're saying, but let's have a look at it logically. You think the board are going to appoint someone that's going to give them a hard time?
No, they won't.
That's the problem.
I'm just saying what I think.
Yeah. Because
do you know what I mean?
I don't disagree. Like a Malcolm Blight can walk in and go, "Shut up, idiots! I'm going to do this my way."
Exactly, and that's what he did. And so for me, it's somebody, who's around at the moment. I guess, we're talking about, potentially sort of like a premiership coach, or I don't know who's around at the moment, but probably the most senior one around at the moment is Brad Scott, and he would be. There wouldn't be many people that would sort of think that he would be a good idea, but it's just that somebody who will be able to go in there and say, well, this is how it's going to get done, and I'm clearing out this player, and I'm sacking Tex, and I'm sacking this player, and I'm doing that. And do you know what I'm trying to say? It's someone that can just go in and do these things.
How about this then? Because I don't know. I mean, Malcolm could do it, I think, because of the era that he coached in and the way things were structured back then. Don't forget, there wasn't a lot in the org chart back in '97. But do you do it this way? Do you get a bloke like Scott Burns who you think can connect with the young group, and do you cover him up with and I'm not saying this individual because I don't think he's gettable, but a bloke such as Neil Baum in the footy director role, who can give Scott Burns enough space to do his job, and Neil Baum or that person can have all the fights with the CEO and the board and all the rest of it. That's probably the structure I'd prefer, but that would involve a hell of a lot of change internally to be able to get their heads around that.
Yep, and that's where I was looking at someone like a Ross Lyon in that role, someone that will fight the fights and someone that will give. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying in terms of connecting with the developing side. Give them the air that he needs to go about his job and do it in the way that he thinks. And if certain players have got to go, if they're not towing the line, if there's a clique, if there's all that kind of stuff, then Ross Lyon just comes in and cleans house.
How's this too, Pete? This occurred to me during the week, and I'll just chuck it in there for discussion. We were talking about Chapman and the fact that he's grooming someone, and the word is that it's Rashudo is the chairman-elect. There's been a bit of talk around, and Macca was a big proponent of this, that we should get Bucky Cunningham in to do an external review of the club.
Yep.
I reckon Bucky Cunningham would be just about the best choice going around as chairman of the Adelaide Football Club.
Ooh, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Would they do it? Absolutely not. But would he shake shit up? Absolutely he would.
Of course he would. And this is why they won't do it.
And that's the problem. That's the crux of the problem. We will not appoint a coach that will stir things up. We will not appoint a football director that will stir things up, and we will not appoint a chairman who will stir things up. So again, it comes back to that these things that I keep banging on about: competitive tension. There is none. Blokes that are change agents, there are none, and around we go.
I love that term. I love that term that you use, Fiend, change agents, because it's so accurate. And that's why Teague left. That's why Franco left, because they can see that, that there is just, you're butting your head against a brick wall, and they go.
Yeah.
And that's why, how many Teague, I guess one, or I guess those two you could say now, but, who's going to come poaching, buddy, many assistants that we've had over the years?
Well, there's none.
Who's poaching Campo?
No. And you would think an ex-Carlton favourite who's had 10 years of coaching experience, a senior assistant coach, has coached in a dire period of the club, you would think that Carlton would be absolutely bashing the door down for someone that was described in that fashion, until you say, oh yeah, that's Scott Camporelli, and then you go, oh no, don't worry about it.
Yeah, no.
It's ridiculous. Anyway, so I don't know, Pete. I don't know who within the club is going to have the knackers to appoint the people that are actually going to shake the club up. Because why would you do that? If you're on a very protected board, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself in harm's way? So, and therein lies the problem. Unless we have this external review, and unless it's actually non-biased, and unless it's a genuine review that is going to be embraced by the board come hell or high water, there's no impetus for change. And as we've talked about so frequently on here and on Big Footy and in other places, as members, we don't have any... there's no mechanism for us to force change. We don't have any mechanism. There's no pressure on the Adelaide Football Club to force change. It's all about appearances, and it's all about making money. So I don't know how we change our club.
Well, the only way you do, and I saw an article in The Age about this a couple of weeks ago, really what you're left with now is voting with your feet. That's all that's left, because actually what this is now, this is not, the AFL is, they're not community clubs in the way that we grew up with footy. They're entertainment organisations, and if you're not happy with the entertainment, well, you don't go. And that's really that's what it's boiled down to now. You do not have, and most of the clubs now have similar kind of constitutions that we have, because they're multi-million-dollar organisations, and so really all that's left is there's no more sort of overthrow of the board. That's those days are long gone. What you're left with is voting with your feet. If you you look at the crowds at Port Adelaide now. I mean, they are in pain, and they know it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the mass exodus. The mass exodus at 3/4 time that Nikki reported last week was a good start. It was a good start.
Was terrible. I mean, they got 40. What did they get? 48. Well, that was.
They said that
it was always going to mask the issue by playing Collingwood, because there was a massive representation of Collingwood there, and there always is. So that always masked it. But the week before, the game before, they got under 40,000.
Yeah. And I don't think there's any way there was 48 at that game. When they panned in close on the eastern stand, every second or third seat was empty. Now, I know you get people, out the back or whatever, but it wasn't a 48,000 crowd.
No, you can tell because I'm on the western side, but when you look across and which section of the eastern stand are the ones where you've got to pay for the set seats, and that where that is, and that's kind of a bit sparse, but then there's the section next to it where everybody has to get in early to get their seat. There were spots, and you rarely see that, even at the start of the game. It was so obvious that we weren't going to get, from our supporter base, a decent crowd. Now they'll probably try and excuse it a little bit by it being a Saturday afternoon and people had commitments and they couldn't get there. It was like, no, there was a whole lot of people who just weren't interested in turning up. And then that vision at 3/4 time, and it was even before it, but it was so stark at the break of it was just a continual stream out.
Never mind. It's 9:42, and I'm just checking my emails, and I still haven't got a reply from Shuts, so it looks like there'll be none of that this week. And I think we've probably done this conversation to death because we'll be covering it plenty more over the next month or so while we watch some other teams playing finals. And even if we do happen to sneak in week one, as a player, I don't think any of the players would believe that they could do any damage. You'd almost want them to play the kids to give them some finals experience. But let's not make any mistake. Our season is well and truly cooked, irrespective. So, never mind.
Get on the sample team.
Absolutely, get on the sample team. Now,
Down at Flinders University Oval on Saturday.
This one's for you, Nick. It's not the team. Got any?
Just the one, apart from our absolute shambles of a team, which I thought we did very well. Dear old Brad Scott, at the end of that absolutely amazing game between Brisbane and Geelong, and he was asked about, Charlie Cameron, who kicked 5 goals in the game. Was he, a bit of the difference, etc.? And his response was, I didn't think he had much influence in the game.
I did see that. Chris Scott it was too, but I did see that, Nikki.
And it's just like, yeah, there's his little sour grapes coming to the fore again. We love it when he gets the shits on.
Hasn't Charlie done well?
He has done so well.
Yeah. Him and Jared, I must admit, I'm extremely, extremely happy for Jared Lyon.
Yeah, me too.
Couldn't happen to a nicer bloke.
See, 2026, what season did he have that good year? 2015? 2016?
Yep.
2016, I think it was.
2016.
Averaged over 20 possessions a game, and he got offered a contract of about 150 grand a year.
Yeah, 150. Which is, ironically, I think what we're offering someone else at the moment, thereabouts.
Yep.
Did he play basketball?
No, he's an ex-cricketer, I believe.
Yeah, he used to play cricket.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
He's very good, though. Why are we doing that to him? That's bad.
Well, so is Jared Lyons.
Yeah.
Because we're stupid.
That's some of the things that we do.
Because he's not fashionable.
Yeah. Is it also, I know we talk about this a little bit, but is it also how we talk about the club being a bit, back everyone into the workplace? So the longer you're there, the more you get paid, and that's sort of what it is, and you'll get your payday towards the end of the year. We're not actually paying people what they're worth at that point in time.
Yeah, I think there's a few players that just aren't part of the gang, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. 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 The gang's going well.
Anyway.
Keep going, Nick.
That was all I really had.
Oh.
Apart from the shit show that was our team. Because they were mostly a bunch of cockwomblers.
Very good. Well, that's it. Donk, you want to do competitions quickly?
Sure.
Do it.
Hello, friend. Look, I'm
Go.
out of the real dream team, so I don't
so am I.
Yeah, but mate, so just for people that have no idea about this, at the end of the year, the top 16 teams out of the 18 get to go through and play the finals, and then sort of like the Magoo versions of the finals. Just want to point out that Phoenix didn't even make the Magoo version of the final, so let's just go there. Look, a big week. Yeah, well, you're very good at it. Look, big week. We've got Dylan FCC. I'm pretty sure he's going for back-to-back premierships, taking on Nathan Sandcrow, who knocked me out a couple of weeks ago. Oh, no, Mick Spuds did that, but he did it first. So good luck to those guys. Really good season, and we're actually we're ranked 695 in the country, the league itself. So that's actually a pretty good effort. Mind you, there's only 1,100 teams in the league, so but we're still in the top 700, so that sounds good. As we come over to tipping, I'll just run through this. Mick Spuds still on top. with 125 with 1 round to play. Moyley coming home strong with 123. Only got 3 for the week last week, so no good Moyley. I can't read whoever's name that is in third. Nikano. Anyway, they're on 121. Bayside Crow 121. DSG, then J Mac middling the pack. Joel, Megan V, Paulie C, Orion's Short Man, Tree Man, Fiend Man, Matt Man, and Donk Man round up the tail. So last week to get any tips, I don't think that I'm making up the 35-point deficit that I've got to take out the tipping. So
no, you're cooked,
good luck to everyone. Yeah,
you're cooked.
Yeah, I was good.
Thanks, Donkey, and you've stuck pretty fat on the competitions this year, so well done, mate. In the face of ongoing abuse from Macca, it's been horrific, and I've received your harassment claims, so we'll be dealing with that internally over the coming
Shane,
week.
just really quickly, some comment in the chat there about just a few people raising their eyebrows at those numbers we put out about Jared Lyons. That was pretty around the mark. We were getting again same sources gave us all that McGovern information, and it certainly did not have a 2 in front of it. It had a 1 in front of it.
Yeah.
And I think it was somewhere maybe a little bit north of 150, but not much.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It left him with absolutely no alternative but to leave.
No. They drummed him out of the club.
And I think it was done deliberately to get him to leave.
Of course it was. Absolutely. Now, Peter, our last rap show coming up for the year, I would imagine, unless we fluke it and get into the finals. But our last rap show for the year coming up on Sunday, so get around that. We are having an interview that we're recording. And what do you reckon, Pete? I reckon I could say who we got. Do you reckon?
Let's put it out there because I'm really excited.
Yeah, so Angela Pipos has agreed to have an interview with us. We'll be recording that on Monday night. She's a well-respected sports journalist. She's an advocate for women's football and women's sport in general. She's hosted ABC Grandstand. She's been on ABC Radio. She's now... What is she doing now? She's doing a lot of speaking, and she's on some other show too. I can't remember.
She's still hosting ABC Grandstand. She's actually a Crows ambassador.
Yep, that's right.
As well. And
she's got a great book as well.
Yeah, there's 2 books, I think.
I know this week she's emceeing the Basketball Australia function leading up to the match between Australia and the USA. So she's no lightweight. She is an absolute heavyweight in sporting circles, and we're very, very excited to have her.
Absolutely. She's Crows ambassador too. I'm sure she'll have a perspective on what's going on at the club, but we're fascinated to have a chat with her on Monday. It should be excellent. So all things being equal, that will be on next Tuesday night live, next Tuesday. Of course, we could by some miracle get the club's answers, but I think Angela will still get first cab off the rank, even if we do, just for being more current. We will, if as expected, we bow out after the minor round, we'll keep going on a Tuesday night all through the finals and all through the trade and draft period as we usually do. So certainly Tuesday night live, irrespective, will continue until, sort of mid-November, I think we go to. And then lots of changes coming up that we'll talk about for next season. So thanks everyone for joining us on Spreaker Chat. It's been a massive night tonight. Thanks to those who've been watching and commenting on Facebook and YouTube. A big thank you to our supporters, Ryan at Smith Partners Real Estate, the lads down at Down to Earth Electrical, Scorpus's Hardware on Box channel, and of course a massive thank you to all our patrons on Patreon. If you want to get around the CrowCast, get to patreon.com/AFL Crowcast or hit the Patreon button at aflcrowcast.com. Donkey, Nikki, Peter, thank you very much, lady and gentlemen.
Thanks, mate. Much appreciated. Thanks, everyone.
And we'll see you Sunday night. See you guys.